The brand that you're going to build in a local community is going to be based on the quality of your product and your service. Your reputation is going to be based on that. And so if you feel like you want to strengthen your brand, strengthen the product. You don't need to make a video on Instagram every day talking about fat and carbs. Because real talk, you're not going to be better than the hottest chick on planet Earth talking about the same thing in terms of reach. And the thing is, and here's the double-edged sword. Let's say you are amazing at it. If you do that, what's going to happen is that you're going to get more demand on your personal brand and online, et cetera, people who don't live close to you. That will be a greater business opportunity for you than a single local location. I think that for most local businesses, the brand is going to be about the reputation. The reputation is going to be built on consistently meeting expectations. Now, the thing is we always talk about over-delivering, and I've even talked about over-delivering. But I think a lot of times I think about this, and the real is that most people just can't even meet expectations because we sell so hot. And so if you could just meet the perception that this person has, the expectation they have of the service that they're going to get, you already won. Make promises, keep promises. Make promises, keep promises. And if they liked the first promise you made them and you keep it, they'll be with you forever.
Need motivation?
Watch your top 10
with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because I need it. I need it for me because I don't wake up every day and say, yes, let's go conquer the world. No, I wake up and I need that external motivation to match my internal motivation. When I see somebody who's doing amazing things, it makes me just want to play a bigger game. And so I hope that today's video makes you want to play a bigger game too, because your message matters, and let's get it out to the world. So today, this one from one of the best, Alex Hormozi, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Rule number 2 is define your inputs and outputs.
If you can't define the inputs and outputs that are going to get you what you want, then there's no way to start, right? Because you don't know what you're supposed to do. So you have to define it down to like the most basic first action. So it's like, if I want to start creating content, then it means I have to post something. If it means I have to start doing I always think in terms of business because that's what I'm in. But like, I'm either doing a cold reach out, I'm doing a cold call, cold email, cold DM, whatever that is. I have to make a piece of content. I have to post it. I have to make a podcast. I have to make a YouTube video. I have to make a short, whatever that is, make a blog post. I have to run an ad. Right? I have to run the ad. I have to press go. I have to spend the money, whatever it is, like whatever that core initial action is.
Go to the gym, input. Lift the weight, put the shoes on, get in the car.
Whatever the input is, you have to define what the input is that's going to get you the output you want. I'm a big fan of being directionally correct rather than absolutely correct. And so I think what happens is most people are trying to find the perfect answer when they have no perspective from which to make a judgment. They're trying to find the perfect thing to do when they haven't done anything. So how would you have perspective to make a judgment? Like if you try a lot of things in the beginning, which you have to know what your inputs, outputs are, decrease your action threshold enough with either a cheese or a cat, whatever you need. Most people have more cats than they have cheese in the beginning. So use the cat to start running towards something. And the thing is the rat, it's so simple. It's like there's cheese here. But what you really just need to know is that there's cheese out there. And there's a cat behind me for sure. And so if I just go anywhere away from the cat, I will have a higher likelihood of getting closer to the cheese. Not that I will find it, but I will get closer to it. And I think and I've lived my life through a series of rapid iterations, not trying to pick the right thing.
Rule number 3 is own your decisions.
What does it mean to Alex to own your future?
So, I think it means high agency. So meaning like when we're kids, it becomes real. We learn what the world means through other people. And so like you have Luca and he's like, what does that mean? And what is that? And so you're literally telling him what things mean. And so like the first things we learn are only from the few people around us that tell us how to interpret the world. And then once we turn 16, 17, 18, 20, 23, all of a sudden we're like, I don't know if everything that every one of these people who told me what things mean were right.
Yeah.
And so we spend the rest of our lives trying to unlearn what everyone has told us meant and then make up that meaning for ourselves.
Wow. That's an amazing and true, because the word that came to my head, you're trying to decipher. Is that my father's perspective?
Yeah.
Or is that reality? And what is reality?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my goal personally has been to dissect decisions and think like, is this a decision that I'm making because I believe this or because of what I want other people to think about me as a result of this decision? And we're social beings. We care about what other people think. And I don't think we're ever going to like get completely rid of that from us. I mean, you'd have to be, Gandhi or whoever,
Right,
Buddha,
right.
right? But at least if I can try and be aware of how much something might influence me, then at least gives me the wherewithal to say, okay, warning flags. This is a sensitive subject that your dad always wanted for you. be extra careful around decisions that go in this direction. And so I can just take that extra pause of space and say, okay, is this really me, or is this because I want him to think this about me?
Wow.
And it, like, dad is really just a foil. It could be your brother, your sister, your spouse, your ex-wife.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That rival or the competitor, whoever it is. The moment that I realized this in my life was I was 19 years old. And at the time, I was an angry 19-year-old, like some of us are, and probably unrightfully so. But I really disliked both my parents, really heavily. And I remember thinking to myself, like, they messed me up. I have all these anger issues. Like, I hate everyone. I'm a lone wolf, whatever. And I remember catching myself blaming them and thinking to myself, that means that I give them all the power in my life. Like, wherever I point the finger of blame is also where the power follows. It's like power follows blame.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, what am I going to do about it? Because maybe they did wrong me. It doesn't really matter. It's only me who can own my own future, because otherwise they're going to own my future for the rest of my life. And then the thing that made it crack for me was the idea that the people that I hated the most owned me. That was the thing. So so it was like, so these people that I hated and blamed, then flipping it from the blame to they own me, they have power over me. I was like, I never want them to have power over me. And then that was actually the first real crack I had in like the dam of trying to like make my own life and start. That was when I decided to not be pre-med, because that was what my dad wanted me to be. And like, there were many steps on this, this journey, but the first one of like just not being a doctor like him and just saying like, I want to get into business because it's like, I'm way more interested in this stuff. Like you can imagine, I was like shaking to try and tell my dad this. But yeah, it was like, I blame them. They owned me. I don't want that.
Rule number 4 is identify your constraints.
Everything that we do at acquisition.com and the approach that we have with growing any business is spending a lot of effort to try and identify the constraint of the business, because every single business is constrained. There's one thing that is limiting its growth. So right now, and here's the part, who here works all the hours of the day? Like most of the hours that you're awake? Okay, half of you. If your business is not growing as fast as you want it to, you are working on the wrong stuff. If it has stayed the same and you're spending all your time working on it, you're not going to get more hours. So you're doing the wrong shit. So it means that you have not properly identified the constraint of the business. So I'll give you an example of this. We had a media company that came to us, big YouTubers, 40 million plus subscribers, and they were like, hey, I was like, what's the goal? They're like, we want to make money. I was like, cool, love it, great goal. So they're like, we think that we need to create a better media machine. It's like, okay. They're like, we need to really systematize this and do it better. It's like, okay. How are you monetizing? AdSense. By the way, very inefficient way to monetize. Okay. And so they're like, I think these are all the things that we need to do to eliminate our constraint for our production. Cool. It's like, have you thought of, wild idea, maybe we just like, the constraint of the business is that you don't have something to sell. I was like, you're like a 97 out of 100 on media, and you're a 0 out of 100 on to sell. And you're trying to talk about how to get to a 99, rather than like, if we just went from 0 to 20, we would probably make you 10 times more money than you're currently making. And so that is an idea of the theory of the constraint, right? Like the constraint of that business was not media. And many of you, the constraint of your business is not making better workouts, right? That's not the constraint. It's not the constraint, right? That's not the constraint. And so right now, if you spend all your day working on shit that doesn't move the ball, working on the wrong shit.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5 is change your environment.
What other ways would you say, if your life sucks, the easiest thing is to change your environment? What other ways could someone do that?
I mean, the environment is, like, this is I'm going to tangent and I'm going to come back. So if you've ever heard somebody say like, man, I hate Cincinnati. Cincinnati sucks, right? Or they go some city and like they go there for 2 days and they make a judgment across the entire city, right? But it's like, okay, let's go really deep. You ate at 3 restaurants and you saw 7 total people in Cincinnati. Does Cincinnati suck, or do the 2 restaurants that you went to or the 7 people that you were with are they not that cool? Well, it's so easy to just move like 2 miles down the street. It's the same reason people do staycations. It's like you don't even need to change cities. You can be in the same city and still change the environment. Like just moving out of your mom's basement, you know what I mean? And just going into another place with 4 guys can change the environment. And so like that's the thing that to me was so telling on this was, so heroin addiction, super addicting, I'll put it that way. And when a bunch of soldiers came back from Vietnam, they had been addicted. I don't know if you've heard of this, right? 25% of soldiers who went to Vietnam tried heroin. It was like an insane statistic. And in the US, 90% of heroin addicts who go to clinics relapse. So they have a 10% long-term success rate. Tough. The stats are completely reversed from people who got addicted or did heroin in Vietnam and then came back to the US, which then you could draw the line, which is, it's better to change your environment than to even do anything else, because what happens is you eliminate all the triggers and cues that are associated with the habit that you're trying to destroy.
Do you see that the American government was absolutely concerned that there was going to be an epidemic?
Yeah.
They were adamant that all of these soldiers were going to come home and they were going to be these veterans that were all addicted to heroin.
Yeah.
Wild.
And there are, for sure, but so much proportion less than their quote should be.
Yep.
Because the problem with the current system and like, for anyone who's listening, you can still extrapolate the principle or the concept. People are in the environment that they are addicted. They change environments and they go to a clinic. They change the environment, they change their behavior. And then they go back to the same environment and their behavior changes yet again to match the environment. And so it's like, if you want to change your actions, the easiest thing you can do is just change the environment. Because if you can do that, a lot of times, a lot of the negative things you have, you just don't get triggered. You don't get the cue for the behavior. It just gets extinguished.
Rule number 6 is learn to say no.
Warren Buffett once said, the difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. When I look at the periods of my life in business where I've had huge amounts of growth in very short periods of time, I've gone through things that I call the season of no. And a season of no isn't forever, it's just for now. And sometimes seasons can be 3 months, sometimes seasons can be 3 years. The longest season of no that I had was a 3-year season. During that season of no, I said no to friends. I was a little bit extreme, but I also was running from absolute poverty, and I had started seeing some success, and I was so afraid of messing it up that I said no to alcohol. So I stopped drinking entirely. I stopped saying yes to any social events. I was in a paid group that I was paying like $35,000 a year to be in, and I didn't go to any of the events for 2 years, even though I paid for it. A lot of people think it hurts to say no to things, because it does, because you feel like you're rejecting other people, and most of us have been on the other side of that, and feeling rejected sucks. You have to kind of trick your brain into thinking that the no is actually a yes to the thing that matters most. Because the way that I've always thought about this was from my first principles perspective of, if I achieve this really big thing in 3 years or 5 years, all of these doors will be open for me. But if I allow these onesie, twosie, one-off conversations, one-off favors, one-off things to take me away from that one big thing, I know that 5 years from now, me not having the thing makes it far less likely that even those first doors are still open. They're only reaching out to me now because of the little bit of success that I've experienced, which I got here because of being focused on the one thing that mattered most. Gym Launch and the big $50 million whatever exit was built during a season of no. And all the people that I said no to still hit me up. But if I hadn't built that during a season of no, and I had said yes to all these little things and I said no to the thing that mattered most, they might not be here still hitting me up. There's 2 scenarios that I play out in my head. One is that at the end of this, where you achieve something, 95% of people are gonna be even further behind you. And so you'll still have access to them. The people who were on par with you shoulder to shoulder, always mutual respect. You still also have access to them. If for some reason someone is offended that you said no to them earlier on, guess what? There are other people that in this future state will walk into your life. And so there's a lot of no's that I made early on that I can't even remember the door that probably permanently shut, because I have so many other doors that have opened for me.
Rule number 7 is do what you love.
If you love the actual doing of the business, the thing you do, the product or service you deliver, that is your art, then I would say start with the path of the artist. And if you're good, because if you really do love it, you should be able to beat other people who don't love it. And so you should naturally, through word of mouth, be able to get more demand than you have supply of time. At that point, you'll have to start making the decision. Am I gonna go hybrid or am I gonna go all the way entrepreneur? If you're starting out right now and you're watching these videos and you just love entrepreneurship in general and you don't really care what you sell, you just wanna make money, then you probably are more the entrepreneur path. You just wanna hustle, you wanna figure out needs in the marketplace, figure out stuff that people are buying, connect the two dots, build the organization around it, put an operator in charge, and then let it run and make cash flow. That's the entrepreneur path. The middle path, the hybrid path, is usually someone who starts as an artist and then becomes that because they still want to build the big enterprise, but they don't want to sacrifice the thing they love the most, which is actually building the product. This little product thing, as a side note, could also be marketing. It could also be finance. If you like a certain component of the business, you can own that component of the business and have someone build it around you. You could just be the guy who loves fundraising and you just love raising funds and that's how you build your business and you get everybody else around you to run it. You will still leave your thumbprint on different aspects and be more heavily involved in different departments, the ones that you love the most. But at this point, you do it by choice rather than do it by obligation. Do I love the thing or do I love the business of doing the thing and then walking that path down? And the best news is you can always change your mind later.
Rule number 8 is learn to prioritize.
This one was about figuring out which thing to do. This is about figuring out what to do. So when you're deciding which thing to do, this is a clear case of lack of strategy, all right? Now, strategy is a big, fluffy, amorphous word that gets tossed around a lot and no one knows what the it means, but it's probably important. And in my opinion, it is the most important. But I'm gonna give you a different definition for this to make it a little bit more useful, okay? Strategy is just prioritizing. That's all it is. Like whenever you hear someone say, we have to figure out our strategy, it just means we have to figure out our priorities. That's all it means. And in layman's terms, it's what's gonna get us the most bang for the buck. If you want the fancy definition that I have, it's how you choose to allocate resources that are limited against unlimited options. That is strategy. And the tough part about this, about strategy in general, is that when you're looking here, you have all these options. Strategy is figuring out, actually there's one that's right here that takes us off the page. Because the most costly thing in business isn't just the unknowns, but it's the unknown unknowns, as in the things that you didn't even know you could pick from.
Rule number 9 is focus on what matters.
Innovation is saying no to 1,000 other good ideas. There's the opportunistic yeses and nos that we have to make. So the better and better your business gets, the more attractive the opportunities that will present themselves. And so you may have this marketing agency, for example, and it's doing well, but then all of a sudden one of your clients is like, hey man, how about I give you equity in my business and you keep doing the marketing for me? And then you start thinking to yourself, well yeah, because I'm gonna make more on this deal, I should do this deal. But the thing is there's so much inefficiency in this one-off or onesie-twosie relationship that you lose on the main thing. If you build this massive agency, that's the thing that everyone's gonna come to you for. If you have this weird thing with 2 or 3 odd appendages from these one-off deals, I'll tell you as an investor, when I see that, I see an undisciplined entrepreneur. I see someone who cannot focus on the thing that matters most. And that's why when we talk about leverage in terms of getting more for what you put in, that's why being so selective on the one thing that matters most is so important. Because most people don't achieve the success they want because they either don't do the thing that matters most enough times, they don't do it for long enough, or they're doing the wrong thing altogether. Most plans taken to their natural end are actually pretty good. So even if you had a local business that was a dry cleaning business, if you did it for 40 years and never got distracted, I promise you that 1, you'd have a pretty good dry cleaning business. 2, you'd probably have multiple locations, and 3, you might have been able to scale nationwide.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is take risks.
Opportunities only look like opportunities in the rearview mirror. Today, they look like risk. How does someone get around this asymmetry between the fact that, in retrospect, it seemed totally obvious, and yet the thing that you're looking at right now, looking forward, you go, oh, that might not be obvious in retrospect again.
It's tough because a lot of the big wins, you know, like Uber's the classic example, right? Like, let's start a business where strangers pick up girls who are 16, you know what I mean, and drive them to their friends' houses. Like, that sounds like a terrible idea, right? Like but in retrospect, you're like, no, it'll be totally fine because there's going to be a mutual rating system and blah, 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 right? Taking out the fact that there are people who've been captured and whatever. Anyway, we'll put that to the side, right? And the thing is like, just because we're on the investing side, what we found is that there are always reasons to say no to a deal. You can always find reasons to say no because there's nothing that's risk-free. Even treasuries have risk. The US economy could collapse and treasuries could be worth nothing. And you could create a really compelling argument. Lots of influencers spend a lot of time doing that, right? Is it likely? Maybe, I don't know, but it's probably less likely than a bank failing. Because if the US fails, all the banks by default are also failing. So which of these is greater risk? So then you start comparing risks rather than trying to eliminate risks. And so if we're looking at opportunities, that's why risk-adjusted return is one of the things that a lot of investors look at, which is is there a way that I can appropriately adjust this risk to normalize different opportunities? And I think that single skill set is one of, if not the most important skill sets as an entrepreneur, because fundamentally it's betting. That's what we're doing. We're making bets. Every day we bet with our time, we bet with our money. With the limited constraints we have or limited resources we have against unlimited opportunities. Because that's the hard part, is that it's unlimited women in the red dress. Now there's some 4s and there's some 6s and there's some 8s, but you have to both rate the girl, right? The opportunity, and then also how crazy is she, right? Or whatever risk factor you want to, associate with this. Is she going to stab me in my sleep? I don't know, right? Does she have a crazy ex-boyfriend? I don't know about. I don't know, right? And so that's why we do the diligence process. But the way that because I just tied up this chapter in the book that's coming out, is when we're organizing opportunities that we're going to pursue with a business, we look at what are the ones that we have the absolute highest likelihood of success, that we need no new skills and no new effort. If we can do that, or the least amount of new effort and no new skills, that would be the first thing we're going to do. And then once we take off all the ones that take basically no effort and no extra skills, we're okay, which ones take more effort and still no skills? And then once we do that, then we're okay, now we can start learning a new skill. And of the different skills that we could learn, which of these is going to give us the highest leverage, as in most output for the least amount of input? And that's pretty much how we tick down which of these opportunities we want to pursue, because those have the lowest likelihood of not happening.
And one of the things that I live by is that we're one decision away from changing our life forever, right? You're one decision away from drinking and getting killed in a car accident. You're one decision away from, cheating on your spouse and destroying your marriage. You're one terrible comment away from destroying your child, right? And you're also one decision away from destroying your business if you so chose. So decisions are the wellspring of life, or at least the train track splits of where we're going to end up. All right. Learning to make the decisions is an important concept, but believe it or not, for this video, what I want to focus on is actually the environment under which to make the decision. During this process, one of the things that was very frustrating for me, and this decision took me about 12 months to make, and I'll explain what the decision was in another video in the future, but it's safe to say it was a hugely impactful decision in my life, financially and otherwise. One of the difficulties that I was having is that the information that I had was not changing, and yet my decision of which way to go continued to falter. All right, so I kept ping-ponging back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And so I was it's not my decision-making process, right? And the data that I have to make this decision is unchanging, and yet at different days, I would have different outcomes, which to me is big red flag danger alert in terms of a leading indicator of a bad decision. Mind you, as a quick caveat to this is not how you need to make all the decisions in your life. I would say that you should find and use this process for the most important decisions you make in your life. Who are you going to marry? Where are you going to live? What are you going to work on, right? What are you going, those are the decisions, are we going to make this big strategic change in our business? Those are big, irreversible decisions. And that's the key for me, is that if a decision is irreversible, and has downstream consequences, then those are the ones that I take more time to analyze. All right. Now, here's the piece that I was missing in my equation for making these decisions, which I want to share with you. All right. One of the key pieces of how we decide is the brain chemistry that is going on. So whether you have lots of dopamine, lots of serotonin that are circling around in your brain will ultimately affect how you make decisions. Believe it or not, we are 100% emotional decision makers. The thing is what we want to do is control the extent to which the emotions control our decisions. All right, that's the key point here. If you don't acknowledge that emotions weigh into all of your decisions, even your quote rational ones, you are lost. All right. What you can do is first identify when you are feeling emotional. And a lot of guys feel like this is like a foo-foo term. If you're angry, it's emotional. If you're insecure, that's emotional. There are other emotions beside being a pansy. If you have emotions, it decreases the speed with which you make decisions, and mistakes love a rushed decision. You can say it with me. Mistakes love a rushed decision. It's one of the credos that Leila and I live by. The environment under which we make this decision is important. Now, we have to acknowledge the biases that we have. Here's where emotions get even worse. You have two biases that you have to fight against. One is confirmation bias, which is your emotional soup in your brain is going to say, this is what I want because this is how I feel safe. Then your logical brain will search out reasons or data to support that thing, right? It's like making an argument to yourself. The problem is you may change your argument, but it's not going to change reality, which means that the decision can be good or bad based on the soup that we started as the predisposition towards how we were going to gather data. The second is conviction bias, which is how convicted am I in this thing or this decision? The more you believe in it or the more you want the positive outcome to occur, the more you will purposefully blind yourself because you want to save your ego and how you feel about yourself because it makes you feel good to think about this positive outcome. But it does not affect the percentage likelihood that it actually occurs in the real world, which is why you see other people, because you can be rational about others, you see other people make these terrible decisions and you think to yourself, why on God's earth would they make those decisions? When in reality, that person is you and it's other people who are looking at you.
I tried to get in contact with Arnold Schwarzenegger when I was running Gym Launch because I thought it would make a lot of sense. I wanted him to endorse my book. That was like my whole goal. Turns out nothing worked. It also turns out Arnold doesn't really care. But in order to get his attention, what Leila and I did was he donated $1 million to his charity. And then we ended up sitting down with Arnold multiple times. When you show kindness and generosity towards others, they're more likely to return the favor and like you as a result. The gift you have to do is proportional to the person you're trying to give to. So for example, if you pay for your friend's lunch, that person now feels obligated to return the favor. They're like, hey, I'll get the next one, right? And it's the same reason that outside of a retail store, as soon as you come in, they offer you cold water. It's not because they're nice people, it's because they know that you'll feel indebted to them and be more likely to A, stay longer, B, listen to them, and C, ultimately buy. Imagine how much it costs a store owner to give everybody who walks in the door a water. I don't know, $5 a day. And if they get one person to buy extra a week off of that, which they probably get a lot more, is that worth the investment? It's probably the highest return on investment thing in his entire business. Now, Cialdini gives a really beautiful example of how to leverage this in business. And he shows an example for a waiter. So if a waiter puts a mint on the bill, they get 3% more tips, right? People get something and they're more likely to tip them a little bit more. The waiter gives the person 2 mints. All of a sudden, the tips increase by 14%. And the third way they did the waiter example was that the person put a mint down, walked away, turned around, and put another mint on the table. And that created a 23% increase in tips. It's worth paying $5 a month for a big bag of mints just to make sure you get paid. But the thing is that in business, there are tons of these $5 mint bags that are laying around that you can immediately implement into your own business. Years ago, I actually had this done to me and I saw the effect and it was wild. All right, so there was this guy that I thought was a complete weirdo. Whenever I saw him, he would try and ask me like 100 questions. So he was local to where I was, he was in like some entrepreneur networks, and he would just like try and corner me. And I was like, dude, just get away from me. Eventually I had to confront him and be like, stop talking to me, like go away. And so what happened is he was so ashamed of the whole experience, whatever, he started sending me gifts every single month. So I'm talking about like $500,000 gifts every month, like Cutco knives and like clothing, which was kind of weird, but it was expensive Lululemon stuff. Anyways, for 9 months, he sent me birthday cakes that were custom made and ice cream, like it was wild. After a while, I just started feeling bad because he just kept sending them and saying like, so sorry, hope everything's awesome, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I just saw him the wrong way and I was just like, got him off on the wrong foot. Even though I knew what he was doing, it still worked. And I ended up going out to meet him again. Turns out, still a weirdo. And so that's to show you how powerful this stuff is. You can just start by giving people free gum when you're in class, which is the first time I learned it when I was in middle school. People weren't as mean to me when I gave them gum earlier that day. And so it was a tiny little thing that cost me almost nothing that made my life in middle school a little bit easier.
What do you feel like your future mentor self, when it hits the $1 billion valuation, would say to yourself now? If you were 3 years out, 5 years out, whenever you hit this $1 billion valuation, and you could speak to yourself from the future, what would your mentor, future self, say to you right now that you need to hear?
Keep having fun.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it would be like, if I had hit that at that point, he'd be like, keep doing it. Like everything you're doing, you got here because you're having a good time. So just don't lose track of that, because in 3 generations, everyone's just gonna forget that you're alive. No one's gonna remember your name. You're not gonna be the greatest of all time, because if you did your job, someone else will be even better and younger than you. And so like the only point of the game is to play. And just it would just remind me of something that I already know to be true, but it would just be from future me, hopefully, who would just say it perfectly to my heart. And I would just become a new person, and I would transform, and I'd ascend, you know what I mean? In a halo of light, but that's hopefully what happened.
I read that you said, if there's one skill you have, it's making offers. What do you mean by making offers?
So offers are the terms of exchange. So right before I started my first gym, I went to this weekend workshop to learn how to market. And get this is 2013. It was on Facebook ads. And so I got lucky. So I learned how to run Facebook ads in 2013, 2 weeks before I started my gym. This is when you're getting penny clicks and you could put a girl with a bikini and say, weight loss, click here, and it would run. And so at this thing, I hadn't opened my gym yet. And the guy was like a gym marketing dude. And he said, do you know the secret to sales? Because he could see I was way over my head. All the other guys there were gym owners except for me. And I was like, yeah, because at that point, had never sold anything. I didn't even know the word sales was a thing. That's how out of it I was. And so he pulled me over to the side and he asked me that question. I pulled my notebook out to learn the secret to sales as though it was one line. And it kind of was. He said, make people an offer they'd feel stupid saying no to. And I wrote it down and I highlighted it. And that actually became a core concept that we do in every business that we have, which is how can we make this offer better? How can we make it more valuable? And that was why defining value was such a key thing, because people provide more value, make valuable content. I'm what does this mean? And so we boiled down value into 4 variables. And then there's things that enhance value, but core variables and then things that enhance it. So one is what is the overall dream outcome of the customer? And so a difference in juxtaposition is for guys, if I say I can help you make more money versus I can help you lose weight, most guys would pay more for the thing that will give them more relative status. And so in that way, between two categories of outcomes, this one will be more valuable. Okay, cool. Now, within everything, and let's call it weight loss because that's an easy one everyone can understand, within weight loss, every other thing between a $5 ebook and a $50,000 liposuction surgery, the difference in those prices are the other value variables. And so the second variable is perceived likelihood of achievement, which is if I buy this thing, how likely do I think I will get the outcome? And so if I have a surgeon that's going to do this liposuction, for example, and it's the first surgery they've done out of medical school, and there's another surgeon that has done 10,000 and has 10,000 5-stars, which one would I be more likely to go to? The 10,000 5-star surgery, even if it actually takes that guy less time to do it. How unfair. But my perceived likelihood of getting what I want is significantly higher. So it's actually the equal opposite of risk. Those are the things that we try and enhance in the offers. We try and have a very compelling dream outcome, try and make it very likely that they're going to succeed, and there's lots of elements that make someone feel like it's likely that they'll succeed. On the bottom half of the equation, so it's a fraction. There's 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom. You have time delay between when they buy and when they get. So if someone were able to click a button on a website and immediately look at their stomach and have a 6-pack, that would be incredibly valuable, right? On the flip side, if it takes them 2 years in order to get that, it's significantly less valuable. And so for that same reason, you have to arm wrestle someone to get them to buy a personal training package. You have to spend an hour and a half to get them to buy a 20-pack of trading sessions, whereas women walk into the doctor's office to do liposuction and drop 20 times that amount of money because the time delay is nothing. You get on the table, you wake up and you're thin, right? Then the last variable is effort and sacrifice, which is 2 sides of the same coin. So effort are the things that you have to start doing that you don't want to do as a result of this purchase. Waking up early, getting sore, like in the workout example. Eating foods you hate. On the flip side, the sacrifice are the things that you have to give up that you don't want to give up as a result of this purchase. And so that might be sleeping in, eating the foods you enjoy, margarita Mondays, whatever. And so when we look at these variables, each of them has a evil twin, right? So you've got perceived likelihood of achievement, which is the positive, and then you've got risk, which is the negative. You've got time delay, which is the negative version. You've got speed, which is the positive version. You've got effort and sacrifice, and you've got ease, right? And so when we're trying to make an offer, we try and think through each of these elements of value and think, how can we maximize the upside, make it super, super likely they're going to hit it, paint the vision that they have it, and then on the bottom side, minimize the time delay between when they buy and when they get, and how much they have to do. Because in a perfect world, the moment someone says, I want that thing, that beautiful dream outcome, they'd be virtually guaranteed they would get it. It would happen immediately, and it would be effortless. And I think that is the perfect ideal that we look at in terms of value. And as entrepreneurs, we innovate our way to just keep trying to chisel towards that perfect ideal outcome that we'll never actually get to.
Here are the lessons that I take away from Chick-fil-A that I've tried to apply in as many different places in the portfolio companies that we own and even just at acquisition.com at the holding company. Number one is that they sold chicken sandwiches for 76 straight years and I don't think they're gonna stop. Having singular focus on the core products and not getting cute and not getting fancy and not having 49 menu items, but just saying, what are the things that the most people want and how do I get better and better and better at doing those things? Because better gives you leverage. It means the same input gets you more output. Rather than having lots of different things that you have to put input in, you just put more and more and more because you only have so much juju. If you had 2 items, you can only split test them half as much as you could 1. For example, if you think about this like an Olympic runner, the difference between first place and fourth place in the Olympics is 1/10 of a second. But the difference between first and fourth for a person's life, massively different. We get these outsized returns by making these marginal improvements of being better rather than being new, despite our entrepreneurial desire to have not a chicken sandwich. We're like, what about tacos? What about burgers, right? Like how many times could they have done something like that, but they did it because they knew that they wanted to stick to the essential few and they knew that focus is what was going to compound over the long term. Ruthless prioritization on the essential few items that they need to sell. The fact that they haven't changed their menu in decades should be a testament to the fact that we as entrepreneurs want to change all the time. There's a Henry Ford story that I think drives this home. He was looking at a marketing campaign and he had been working on it with his executives, etc. 3 or 4 months in, he walked past his marketing CMO's office and was like, hey, when are we gonna stop running that ad? He's like, I'm so tired of it. And the marketing executive looked up to him and he was like, you haven't even ran it yet. And so the thing is that we have all these things that happen in our mind because we're always iterating. Like we assume everyone knows everything about our products. We assume everyone's already bored of it because they're talking about chicken sandwiches 24 hours a day. But reality is that most people might get Chick-fil-A once a month, right? As a treat. The customer's perception, when we change something slowly in our mind every 6 months as a small business, to a customer, it just feels like it's constantly changing. There's no consistency. People value consistency. People want to know that when they exchange money, they're going to get the thing that they liked last time. And if you make the same thing the same way over and over again, it also gives you the opportunity to improve it. If you have to improve 100 things, it's a hell of a lot harder than improving 2 or improving 1. And so you've heard me say 1 product, 1 avatar, 1 channel for anybody who's trying to make their first million. Each one of these stores, if you think about them as a single business, like that's how they're thinking. Now, do they have drinks? Yes, etc. The principle behind it compared to everyone else in the marketplace, they have 1/4 the amount of things on their menu compared to McDonald's and they make twice the money. They have such a refined menu because it makes the order process have fewer mistakes in it. It makes the drive-through process happen faster. They're able to have less food go bad because they don't have to have all these extraneous options. They follow Pareto's principle of 80-20. They know that 20% of their stuff creates 80% of their sales. They have all of these efficiencies in there because they're not trying to be cute. They're trying to be the best at a handful of things. And by doing that, they've been able to sell way more than anyone else does with a way more constrained menu and do it so much more profitably. There's wisdom there. And so I try to think about that as like, okay, even though I could do those things, should I? And most times the answer is no. I should just get better at the thing that's in front of me and confront the problem that I have, which is how can I sell more chicken sandwiches, whatever your chicken sandwich is. And to drive even further on the focus they have, even at a micro level within their core product, the chicken sandwich, if you compare that to McDonald's Big Mac or Burger King's Whopper, McDonald's Big Mac has 6 ingredients. The Whopper has 7, not including the bun. Now compare that to Chick-fil-A's sandwich, which just has butter, pickles, and chicken. That's it. They even have half the ingredients on their 1/4 sized menu because even then they get more efficiencies at the ingredient level. They make it faster and easier to prepare so it's more consistent, and they're able to do that with greater economies of scale, and they can make the process itself leaner and faster and leaner and faster, and then you do that for 76 years and you become unbeatable. So one of the things that when they were asked, why are you so limited in your selection? Besides all the reasons I already gave, their response was that every time they added another item, they just saw their sales of their main thing decline. So they're just splitting some sales off the thing, their core products. And so how many of us have opened a new thing, gotten people to switch from the old thing to the new thing, and now you're doing 2 different things for the same amount of money? Sound familiar? Happens all the time. And so it takes the discipline to say no and say, we're just gonna get better. Liking, or what people like to call rapport. People like people who like them, or they perceive as friends. And the more you like someone, the more likely they are to say yes to you. And so the liking principle states that people are more likely to be persuaded by those that they like and want to be like. And that's the second part's important. And they even did a research study to test this. They told people that they paid strangers to compliment them. They then got complimented by a stranger who they knew were getting paid to compliment them. And guess what? They still liked them more than strangers they didn't. And so even if you know what someone's doing, it still works. clicks. And they also found out that there's actually no cap to how much flattery someone will take, provided it's genuine. And here's how I've tried to use this in persuasion. So I always use the ACA framework. Acknowledge what they say, compliment what they did about what they said, and then ask another question. You can get basically anybody to like you in a sales conversation or in a social situation. Acknowledge what they just said because it shows that you're listening and paying attention to them, because the thing that people like more than anything that they pay people hundreds of dollars an hour to is just to listen to them talk. C, you compliment them on what they just said and how it ties to them being a great person in some positive attribute, and then you ask them the next question to move them down the conversation. When you make I am statements, they are the strongest statements that you can make because they are deeply embedded beliefs about what you believe about yourself. And so if you say, I am this way, when you describe yourself, when you meet someone new, you meet a girl on a date and you're like, I have a short fuse, right? I have a temper. I am disorganized. I am not good with time. I am not good with money. I hate even saying this, right? But just to give you the types of things that people say all the time that do not serve them. Does this belief serve me? If it does not, stop saying it. Period. And say something else, right? Or at the very least, if you feel compelled to have to describe this thing, then say, I have a tendency or I struggle with behaviors that are this way, rather than I am, number one. Number two, be incredibly weary of the superstitions and routines and religion that you adhere to, that you claim is the source of your productivity, creativity, alertness, mental well-being, happiness, whatever it is. Or the converse of that, if you lack it, the threats or the punishments that you speak over yourself. If I am not, I am agitated, I have a short fuse, I can't focus, I'm not productive, I don't have energy. All of these things are just weaknesses that you literally build into yourself. So stop. I am not the believer in buying the Ferrari when you can't afford it. I am not the believer in affording the home and paying for the home that you cannot afford because you want to pretend like this is the lifestyle that you want to be around. If you go under the guise of networking, you can still go to those places without buying a $4 million house when you're barely making, a few $100,000 a year. It doesn't make sense. I like Jay-Z's quote around this, which is, if you can't buy something twice, don't buy it once. I really like that. And so this is one of the most common questions I get from newer entrepreneurs, because they think that they have to pose on Instagram in order to get wealthy. And what it does is it conflates sequence. Jeff Bezos is famous because of what he did, not because he became famous as Jeff Bezos and then used his following to build something. Elon Musk is famous for what he's accomplished, not for being Elon Musk and then creating something as a result, right? Let the actions be the thing that gives you the fame rather than yourself. One of the concepts, or one of the things that I get asked a lot when I go, on the rare occasions that I go out in public, is, how do I make more money? How did you get started? What should I be investing in? And I think that it's really important to understand that if someone's able to achieve something faster than you, they're using the same resources that you have from a time standpoint. And so it just means that they're allocating their attention in places that they're getting disproportionate returns on it, right? And so the objective is, how can we find the biggest ROI buckets that we can put our time into so that we can extract as much value as humanly possible, as fast as possible. And so my belief in this is that information is the single best investment that you can have, because information is the only thing that buys you time. Does that make sense? A lot of people want to go faster, but then they don't want to spend money on learning how to go faster. And that is the only thing that gets you from point A to point B in a shorter period of time. And so where it gets really interesting is, how do you acquire those skills? And so can I give you two habits that I think have done really well for me in terms of acquiring skills? So the first thing is, I was up today at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm usually in bed right now. So this is my amped voice. But I say that because I also know I have a few billionaire friends who are night owls. And so I don't think it's a morning thing specifically. I think it's more important that you can always have 4 to 5 hours a day of uninterrupted time to yourself. The biggest breakthrough that I was able to have in my own life from a business standpoint came when I was able to move the big pieces forward every single day, because I started my day that way. And for me, that's when I'm the most creative, is in the morning. And so that's where I invest all of my time in getting and acquiring skills.
Once you pick, just don't stop. That's it. Because if you think of life as an infinite game, like the point of the game isn't to finish the game, right? Because that would mean the point of the game would be to die. So the point of the game is to keep the game going. And that's the difference between an infinite and a finite game. So a finite game has known players, 2 teams, agreed upon rules, and a set outcome where it ends. Infinite games has known and unknown players, no agreed upon rules, and the only point of the game is to keep the game going. And so if you think about life in that way, whether it's business or health or marriage, the point isn't to win at marriage or win at business or win at health. The point is to stay healthy. The point is to continue your marriage. The point is to stay in the game of business. And so the only way you lose in business is quitting. And so as long as you stay in the game, you have more innings. You have unlimited innings, unlimited at bats. And so the only way you lose is stopping. So don't stop.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. For 10 more amazing rules from Grant Cardone, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
This is in 2010, man. Half of you guys were out of business, okay? I said, you got to get the G-Pod, the new G-Pod, man. All my videos are on the G-Pod. Some of you guys would buy it. I'd take the $9,000 and I'd invest the entire $9,000 in real estate.